Raise your fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Policy Director for Push for Excellence. And we want to thank you so much for joining us here today on our Saturday morning forum. Now, we have a great program in store for you. So we want to invite all of you who are watching us on Facebook Live to like our page. But we also recognize that many of you are watching us on YouTube Live. If you're doing that, we want you to subscribe to our page so that you can gain immediate access to all of the content that we have in store for you. And speaking of that content, we need your help. We want you to seriously consider giving of your financial resources, and we've made it really easy for you to do so. You can simply pick up that cell phone and hold it to the QR code available you on the screen and give right on the spot. And if you prefer, you can take that same cell phone and text the word PUSH to 41444. Text PUSH to 41444. And if neither of those works for you, you can simply go to our website at rainbowpush.org and click on the donate button and give right on the spot. Now we're asking that whatever you do, don't touch that dial. The push is on.
Well, we're coming up on Black Voter Sunday, and I know you're wondering why we keep pushing everybody to turn out in these midterm elections. What does it mean for you? Well, we're going to have 3 people to come and share with you the purpose of voting in the midterms. One, we're going to talk about the workers' rights legislation in Illinois, which should be a signal for workers all around the country. And then we want to hear from the Chicago Urban League, talking about the meaning of Black Voter Sunday. What does that mean? Why are we pushing so hard right now to get you ready, to get you registered? You'll hear from the executive director of the Chicago Urban League shortly, Attorney Karen Freeman Wilson. And the third person you're going to hear from is Attorney Ami Gandhi. She's going to talk about the impact of the voter suppression tactics that are happening all around the country. You'll hear from her some of the target states where voter suppression is at a peak. And even in Chicago, we're going to talk about what happens when polling places are relocated. How does that impact voter turnout? We're going to hear about all of those things right after this.
Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
Hi, my name is Frances O'Rennick, and I am the Coalition Director for the Vote Yes for Workers' Rights campaign, which is in support of the Workers' Rights Amendment. The Workers' Rights Amendment will be the very first question on the top of your ballot when you go to vote this November. And it will ensure that your right to collectively bargain and organize and bargain over things such as fair wages, meaningful benefits, and safety at work would be protected in the Illinois Constitution to ensure that those rights are not in the hands of any anti-worker politicians. So before voting for any politicians on the ballot, you have the opportunity to vote yes for workers' rights and vote for yourself. So we know that the Workers' Rights Amendment helps us build an economy that works for all Illinoisans. When folks can join together with their coworkers and advocate for a higher wage, all Illinoisans win. We're able to battle those rising costs that we're seeing across the board, from groceries to gas prices. When workers can join together and negotiate for pay raises, we all win. We also know that the Workers' Rights Amendment will protect Illinoisans on and off the job. When workers are able to speak out about dangerous working conditions without fear of retaliation from their employers, we are all protected from things like shoddy construction work to food safety concerns. When folks that are working on the job are able to say, hey, you know what, this is not a safe move, we are all protected from it. Finally, the Workers' Rights Amendment helps strengthen our communities by protecting first responders. Folks like firefighters, EMTs, and nurses who put their lives on the line for us every day must be able to advocate for the proper safety equipment and proper training that they need to ensure that they're keeping us all safe. We must protect those that protect us. Overall, you have the opportunity to vote yes for workers' rights on the very top of your ballot this November. And if you have any questions, please visit our website at www.workersrights.com. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today, and please feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you.
My name is Karen Freeman Wilson, and I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Urban League. I am excited to be joining this push for voter turnout in the November general election. So often, people think about the elections in terms of who is at the top of the ballot. If it isn't a presidential election year, if it isn't a mayoral election year, very often people don't vote. Well, the good news is that this is a key election year, not just because of who is at the top of the ballot. You have an opportunity to elect a governor here in the state of Illinois, but it's a key election year because of all of the races up and down the ballot. We have an opportunity to elect an attorney general, a secretary of state, and so many other office holders who have an impact on our lives. We have an opportunity to elect a county commissioner. We have an opportunity to elect judges and other offices that impact our daily lives. And even though there is always a lot of buzz about the primary races, the early races, we believe that there should be just as much interest, just as much buzz regarding the November election. And so we are encouraging all of the citizens in our community to come out and vote. Why does it matter to you? Well, it matters to all of us for a variety of reasons. First, it matters because you want to have a say in where your tax dollars go. It's important for you to have a voice in how your tax dollars are spent. And the easiest way to have that voice is, of course, to vote. You want to have a voice in how education is administered in our city, because our children, whether they are in the public educational system or not, it has an impact on the quality of all of our lives. Because if you get a good education, it allows you to either continue your education or get a good job. That's important. And to the extent that all of us in some form or fashion are employers who are looking for people to join our organizations, we have a vested interest in the educational system. It matters to us because at some point we're all going to be seniors. Now, some of us are a little closer than others, and we want to make sure that generations that are following us are equipped to lead when we reach senior status and when we are not as active in the economy, in government, in other sectors that we are engaged in. And so we would invite you to join the Chicago Urban League in encouraging your family, your friends, your colleagues that you work with every day to vote. Now, let's think about this. In the primary election, we saw less than 20% of the voters turn out. Less than 20%. So out of every 100 people, fewer than 20 people voted. So that means that people who presumably know better didn't vote. That means that people who understand the historic significance of the blood, sweat, and tears that our foremothers and forefathers shed to ensure that each of us had the right to vote. That means that 80 of those folks didn't vote. So my question is, are you one of those folks who did not fulfill your civic duty? Are you one of those people who erroneously say, my vote doesn't matter? And I say erroneous because there are any number of races at every level, presidential, gubernatorial, municipal, local races, where one vote per precinct, 50 votes, fewer than 100 votes made a difference. Because so that I want to remind you that your vote does matter, your vote does count. And what I always try to remind people of is, if you don't vote, if you are not a part of the solution, and I would argue that voting is a part of the solution, then you don't get to complain because you have not done your part to help to solve the challenges that we have. We know what the challenges are. We're all concerned about crime, about education, about the impact of COVID and the ability to recover from it in an equitable manner. We're concerned about support for businesses in our community. Those are the things that the Urban League fights for every day. But I would say to you that the way to impact those issues all at the same time in the in a very similar way is to ensure that your voice is heard through your vote. And so again, my name is Karen Freeman Wilson. I am the president and CEO of the Chicago Urban League. I am excited to partner with the Rainbow Push Coalition, the NAACP, and many others at the national and local level to encourage you to ensure that we get out, that we register folks, and even beyond registration, that we encourage our friends and neighbors, our family members, to get out and vote. And if you make yourself the head of your household committee, you're the person in your house to ensure that everyone who is of voting age, one, is registered, and two, gets out and vote on election day. We will see that less than 20% turnout soar to more than 80%. And then we will begin to see change in our community. So let's get out and do it. Let's get out and vote. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Ami Gandhi, Senior Counsel at Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. I'm a voting rights attorney leading our organization's efforts to protect access to the polls in Illinois and Indiana. Our mission is to advance racial equity, and we're here as a nonprofit, nonpartisan resource for any voters, any community partners, any civic organizations who have questions as we're heading into this extremely important election cycle. Even though election day may seem like it's a ways away on November 8th of this fall, early voting and vote by mail processes have begun in many jurisdictions, and voters' questions have already started about how and when and where we can register to vote. What are my rights if I'm in a population like a housing insecure population, or if I have friends or family members who are incarcerated and want to know about their rights to speak out. We are here to help with any of these types of questions or barriers that people are facing as the election approaches. We're available on the Election Protection Hotline at 866-OUR-VOTE. That's 866-OUR-VOTE. And in-person assistance is also available depending on location. Right now, we're gearing up to train our attorneys and legal volunteers to stand ready. We will have an unprecedented number of lines open on Election Day on November 8th. And our hotline is also available even before that time if anyone is starting early, which is a good thing, to make a plan to vote, to make sure that they have all the updated information about their polling place, their registration options, any kind of questions about voter eligibility, any questions about COVID circumstances or health circumstances, which might require people to find some different options when it comes to exercising their right to vote. Now, I want to mention a couple other things here today as you're starting to think about the election season coming up. One is that there are a lot of discouraging headlines these days about voter suppression, about efforts happening in an unprecedented manner locally and nationally to prevent people from voting, prevent eligible voters from being able to access the polls, and to try to reduce the influence of Black and Brown communities. Please keep the hope going, though. We saw the example of the 2020 elections. Despite all of the complications caused in that year's election by the pandemic conditions, by restrictions to vote by mail as a voter suppression tool, by the racial justice uprisings in the wake of the murders of George Floyd and other Black community members. So many people faced a lot of difficulty in the voting conditions in 2020, and nonetheless, people persevered. The voter turnout rates were unlike ever before, and so many Americans of all backgrounds, and including and especially people of color, did go through the effort to make a plan to vote and to show up and to wait it out and to get any of their questions or issues addressed to make sure that their vote was counted. And I wish that people didn't have to go through that trouble in the first place. That's where the voting rights advocacy comes in, that National Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and many other nonpartisan advocates are engaged in. But we can't do it alone, and we have to keep those efforts going to try to prevent those barriers from coming up in the first place. And that's the other thing that I want to mention is the persistent disenfranchisement that unfortunately still happens even in 2022, even in a variety of places, including Chicago and Illinois, unfortunately. There are going to be significant changes to polling place locations and precinct assignments in the city of Chicago for this fall election. And in other places, there are going to be some more orchestrated changes to try to prevent people from voting. We see that especially impacting, for example, people who are incarcerated or unfairly affected by our country's mass incarceration system. That particularly ends up affecting Black people disproportionately. And we have to keep speaking out against those injustices. We have to keep clarifying and asking our government officials for information when we need it. When it's a more technical change, like a polling place location that we need to look up and find out where to go and find out which websites to trust to get the accurate information, or if it's a deeper issue of disenfranchisement or voter intimidation. I encourage all of us to rise up and get the answers that we need so that we can be fully informed heading into this election. You can call us at 866-OUR-VOTE or keep an eye out for other trusted nonpartisan sources of information as we're all getting ready to have our voices heard. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Robert Patillo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition Peachtree Street Project here in Atlanta, Georgia. I would like to invite you to this year's 23rd Annual Creating Opportunity Conference, which will be held October 19th through 21st at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Atlanta. This year, we will be embracing the change in an unstable global economy. We'll be having sessions on everything from political leadership to elections to a women's roundtable, international discussions on social economic issues that exist around the globe. The first 2 days, you'll be able to log in and view the conference from anywhere in the world. For more information, go to rainbowpush.org or email myself, R. Patillo, at rainbowpush.org, or our program director, Trina Heathington, at theheathington@rainbowpush.org. And as Reverend Jackson would say, make sure that you keep hope alive.
Ramsey Lewis played with a soulful elegance that transcended genre, blending jazz and pop into something uniquely his.
The man just oozed charm as he was performing and really engaged his audiences.
Lewis fell in love with the piano while growing up in Cabrini Green and discovered his calling in the notes he heard outside Chicago's legendary jazz clubs.
Used to walk by the London House at Wacker, Michigan every day on his way to his classical piano lessons.
A decade later, as chronicled in the 2021 documentary Live at Mr. Kelly's, Lewis played in that club's house band, opening for some of the world's biggest acts, before achieving his own stardom with The In Crowd, Hang On Sloopy, and other hits.
He was emblematic and essential to that era.
Lewis was also a lifelong supporter of arts education and helped found the Ravinia Jazz Mentor Program, which has helped thousands of CPS students pursue a future in music.
He knew that underrepresented kids in underserved areas would not have the access that they needed.
Lewis was also a radio personality. In 2014, Lewis told ABC7 how he'd like to be remembered.
I just want to be known as a wonderful human being, hopefully, that happened to play piano.
With some help to maintain balance, Reverend Jesse Jackson is determined to get back to work after several weeks at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab while undergoing intensive therapy for Parkinson's disease.
Reverend Jackson is coming home after spending several weeks here at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, taking advantage of a time of much needed recuperation, recovery, and rehab. His doctor and physician is here Dr. Reitberg is going to share, and then we'll have comments from Reverend Jackson.
It's been a pleasure working with the Reverend over the last couple weeks as he recovers from his hospital stay.
I came in a wheelchair, I'm leaving more power.
Jackson has been living with Parkinson's for several years. The neurological disease has no cure. It's a progressive disorder where mobility and speech decline over time. Jackson regained some of it during his stay at the Ability Lab.
We've done some physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, and it's been a joy to watch his hard work, his diligence.
The hard work paid off. Not only is Jackson walking, his speech has improved.
If I talk about work, I've been active. You can't just sleep your way through boxing.
Jackson's work includes sending trucks of supplies to Kentucky flood victims and to Jackson, Mississippi residents who are experiencing a water crisis. In addition, Jackson plans to be an active participant in helping migrants sent to Chicago from Texas.
I love meeting with him daily in the hospital, talking about his goals and the things that are important to him, and I know he's going to continue to be a big presence in our community.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the acting National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition. I want to thank you for joining our International Saturday Morning Forum. You know, we got some great news. Our founder and president, Reverend Jesse Jackson, is back and stronger than ever. You know, he thought it was wise to follow the lead of his physicians and his family and take some much needed time off. And he's back in the saddle and moving straight ahead. I want to thank you for joining me in praying for him, in working alongside him, and lifting him up at the same time as we are about to celebrate his 81st birthday. That's right. The month of October is going to be absolutely dedicated to the life, legacy, and work of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I want you to stay tuned for some amazing announcements that we have related to that. You know, our work across the country and in many places around the world happens each and every day, and it cannot happen without your support. And so I want to urge you right now, if you're not a member, go to rainbowpush.org, click that tab or the QR code that's at the bottom of the screen and become a part of the fastest growing civil rights army on the planet. You know, as we do this work, whether it is in poverty, whether it's social justice, public policy, or legislation, we are striving every day to protect and preserve and maintain the gains of civil rights as we promote humanitarian efforts around the country. And I want to thank so many of you who have already joined us in bringing hope to Jackson, Mississippi. You know, this crisis affects 150,000 in the city, 80,000 in the hardest hit area, and your contribution and your support and your manpower in helping us bring these much needed supplies to Jackson, Mississippi mean a whole lot. And so I want to thank you who have already made contributions, and those of you who will. We have truckloads of water and resources going to the Delta right behind the Cotton Curtain, and it's because of you. You know, whether it is public policy or legislation as it relates to climate control and climate change, and then infrastructure, the much needed investments to bring about the need to make sure that we put people over profits, we raise the quality of life of those in these hardest hit areas, and then we make the necessary investments in infrastructure to ensure that we have not just quality of life, but quality of communities. And so I want you to become a part of what we're doing. I'm personally appealing to you to join this army and help us keep hope alive.
I'm Reverend Ira Ackery, co-chairman of the Leaders Network. I'm also a longtime member of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson is our founder, president. I'm here standing with some of the stakeholders, faith leaders, and political figures who are supporting the relief effort in Jackson, Mississippi. It's unfortunate that America, the legislators, senators, and Congress has not responded in the manner that they should have. And we are going to make all kind of noise to make sure that they have the same type of attention that other areas of the world are getting from our country. Charity begins at home, and we must do all that we can to make sure that they have clean water. Please receive the interim National Executive Director of Rainbow Push Coalition, Bishop Tavis Grant.
Today we are joining the Leaders Network and faith leaders and stakeholders all over the Midwest as we're bringing hope to Jackson, Mississippi. The largest delegation of descendants from the South, particularly Mississippi, live here on the west side of Chicago. We have a vested interest, whether it is Jackson, Mississippi, Greenville, Mississippi, Batesville, Mississippi. Mississippi is home for us. And we're joining hands and joining organizations in bringing relief and hope to Jackson, Mississippi. 150,000 residents are impacted by this third world type crisis, where we know that the crumbling infrastructure, we know that climate change, and then the political construct of obstructing getting resources and revenue to the state capital of Mississippi behind the cotton curtain there in Jackson. And so trucks are coming, resources are coming, help is on the way. And on behalf of Reverend Jesse Jackson, we want to thank this collaborative and collective of leadership who have the consciousness and the moral obligation to respond and help us keep hope alive. You can join this campaign by going to rainbowpush.org or the Leaders Network or the SEIU or AFL-CIO or ANSIBA or any number of organizations that are joining the mental health impact of this crisis on those who are disabled, those who live around nearly 30% of Mississippians who live in Jackson, Mississippi, live below the national poverty line. The health care impact, Reverend Jeanette Wilson, our National Executive Director for Push Excel, can talk to you about Jackson State, a historically black college at the center of this crisis. Education and protecting children is a premium. Reverend Wilson?
I want to thank Bishop Grant. I want to thank Pastor Ira Ackrey, the Leaders Network. I'm standing here with the NAACP, the West Side NAACP, which they will tell you is the best side, one of the most active chapters of the NAACP in the nation, and with Habilitated Systems. And so we're looking at a holistic approach to the issues in Jackson, Mississippi. Yes, there's a water crisis, but it's based on an infrastructure that has been crumbling for the past 3 decades. And when I say infrastructure, there is no barrier between floodwaters that do come and the sewer plant and the water treatment plant. As a result, when the floodwaters came in, the sewers overflowed and there's a backup in the sewer system. They cannot flush toilets in Jackson, Mississippi. They cannot get clean water from their faucets. They cannot take showers. And so when you look at Jackson State, many students had to leave and go home. Then there are many students from California. They could not go home. Many of those black students at Jackson State weren't able to leave Jackson, Mississippi and go to places. Some people have donated porta potties. That's insufficient in the 21st century. And so we're saying that the Army Corps of Engineers must be called upon, as they have built roads in times of war on foreign shores, come and rebuild the crumbling infrastructure in Jackson, Mississippi. They have the technique, they have the tools, they have the capacity, and Jackson has the need. Additionally, the public schools have had to close because you cannot send a child to school where toilets don't flush, there's no running water in the faucets, and they cannot clean themselves. Mothers with babies, all you women who are out there, you understand what it means to be a mother. And you can't flush, you cannot wash your child, you cannot bathe your child, even in a foot tub. They can't get clean water. So we're shipping water. We need gallons of water. We've asked every sorority, every fraternity, every civic organization. It's our challenge to help Jackson, because it's Jackson today. It is Dixmoor today. It is Mount Bayou, Mississippi today, and it's coming to a city near you. We must stop this, and we're calling on President Biden. Federal government has a role to play. They have to give resources to those families in Jackson who've had to buy water and had to substitute for the failing system. We're asking the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, to start now reimbursing families. We're calling on SBA, federal and state, to make sure that they allocate resources. We've said the governor who's running for re-election, your election depends on what you do for Jackson, Mississippi. You turn back resources for infrastructure that Jackson and other parts of Mississippi needed. And so, turn it back to NAACP.
Well, we just want to say we support the crisis. Too often we be left behind when these things take place. We can't continue to be treated like second class, third class citizens. We have to take an effort to move this along. We support this effort, and we support the people in Mississippi, and we just hoping that people down in Mississippi, the governors and legislators, get on board with this effort, and the federal government get on with this effort. We can't get caught like Trina and these other places. We have to be on board and be in front of this and make sure we cure this. We will asking for everybody to give support behind this.
You know, mental health is critical. Donald doing rehabilitative systems. Share just briefly the impact that this relief effort can have in helping those who are dealing with this from a mental health perspective.
Absolutely. And one of the most important things I just want to emphasize is that the amount of anxiety, uncertainty, depression, and other types of issues that are triggered by this trauma, are occurring, by the day, by the moment. We're talking about our family.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about the fact that during the Great Migrations, persons from southern states, in particular Mississippi, migrated to the west side of Chicago. They landed on the west side. So we're not talking about strangers. We're talking about folks that we are related to. My dad is from Mississippi.
That's right.
And so on down the line. So many of us have relatives from Mississippi. So we're not going to ignore Mississippi. We're going to be responsible. We're going to do our very best to ensure that all of the basic needs are attended to. Often we talk about social determinants of health. Every one of those are being impacted right now in Jackson, Mississippi. So we urge you, we're asking you, we're prayerfully appealing to you to do your part and join us in this struggle.
And our final speaker is one of our most trusted and dependable allies from Oak Park, Rabbi Max Weiss, a long-serving board member of the Leaders Network.
Access to clean water ought to be a fundamental human right. The fact that in America, folks can go without clean water for weeks on end is not just a shame, it's a crime.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that this doesn't happen in white-dominated communities. This is primarily impoverished, primarily African-American communities. That is also a shame and a crime. It gives me honor to be able to stand with Rainbow Push, with Westside NAACP, with the Leaders Network, and supporting this effort. Try to get clean water for Texas people.
Thank you.
As we did in Flint, we'll do too in Jackson.
Thank you.
Help is on the way.
Help is on the way. Thank you.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the acting National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and I'm here with Reverend Jeanette Wilson, Attorney Jeanette Wilson, who's the National Executive Director of Push Excel. As we approach the midterms, there is so much on the table and on the line as it relates to how we vote, who we vote for, and what we're voting about. We want to make sure that we provide not just discussion and dialogue, but a sense of an empowerment for you to make decision and take direction as it relates to building better communities across the country. Reverend Wilson, as we look at the midterms from school board elections here in Chicago, police board elections, local and statewide elections, a lot is on the line, and we could very well have a high turnout if we're educated and empowered at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bishop. As we look at, let's take Mississippi. Why would you be voting in the midterms when you look at the water crisis in Mississippi? Well, the resources are allocated from the federal government to the state, to the city, to the county, all across the country. So when you think about Mississippi, everybody in Mississippi needs to be voting because you got Congress people that are running for re-election, U.S. House of Representatives, all of them are up for re-election or running for that office. Why is that important? Because the federal dollars will be pushed down, whether it's the SBA, Small Business Administration, or the Federal Emergency Management, which they have to ship dollars to the state to handle the crisis like Mississippi, but also to pay for the rebuilding of the infrastructure. And so you sitting back saying, I want to help Mississippi. You can't ship enough water to deal with, I can't bathe, I can't cook, I can't wash clothes. That's not enough bottled water that we're sending bottled water, but we've got to deal with the infrastructure that causes the crisis. And so you want to make sure that elected officials all across the country, people that you're voting for, they're focused on how do we make sure we all have clean water? How do we make sure that our infrastructure is secure? The second thing, you look at that water crisis. Remember, we talked about the Army Corps of Engineers. That's federal. And then you got politicians, governors like in Mississippi, who turn back federal dollars, and now you have a crisis in the state capital of Mississippi, a water crisis, which is based on the infrastructure. What do we want that governor to do? Well, he's a sitting governor now. He should be pushing for the Army Corps of Engineers to fix the problem. It's not about the blame. It's like you have the power, he and the president in the United States and all of the Congress people from Mississippi, the U.S. senators as well as U.S. representatives, we want the Army Corps of Engineers to fix the water problem. How do they do that? They have to replace some pipes. They have to put some barriers between the river
and the Pearl River, levees
Pearl
of Pearl
River
Rivers.
and the sewage treatment plant and the water treatment plant. So as we encourage individually, we're going to give cases of water. That's a temporary fix for a major 30-year problem.
You know, this election season is one of the most inflammatory seasons that we can anticipate. You being a lawyer, a number of challenges to elections, to ballots, to certifying elections, and an alarming reality, overwhelming number of those who are running in Senate and congressional races are people who were deniers of President Obama's birth. They're deniers of the 2020 election. They're believers in QAnon. They don't believe in fair and free elections. They don't believe in minimum wage. They don't believe in access to health care. They don't believe in a woman's right to choose. What I'm getting at is behind the cotton curtain, when you look at the Warnock race and Stacey Abrams, and then broaden that lens around the country, there seems to be a political practice and pattern that people are portraying themselves as being something that they're not. I guess they're saying one thing and doing another.
Well, I think we have to remember the elections should not be a popularity contest. They really should be based on our view that the candidate that we're going to vote for is going to pass legislation that is in our best interest. If you're a student, you want to make sure that whoever you vote for Congress, U.S. Senate, state legislative representatives and state senators, that they are focused on how to reduce the cost of college. How is it that in your state do they give you free community college? Is that free or reduced so that you don't go to college and incur a debt that you can't pay? Making sure that at the federal level, there's some increases to eliminating student loan debt, but that the colleges stop increasing tuition.
When we look at the gains that we've made, it has been at the core an organized, collaborative, a rainbow, if you will, that had common interests, common objectives, and one goal in mind: let's win.
Well, I think as we look at this election, labor is now faced with rebuilding itself. You look at the construction trades, many African Americans were blocked from the construction trades because We didn't have a sponsor. No one in our family was a tradesman, and so it's very difficult. Then they moved the trade training programs out of the inner city, out of the Black community. In Chicago, the building trade training places in the suburbs, and we used to have a school that would train you for the trades. That was closed, and so a lot of young people didn't get into trades. Now we have empty union halls in the construction trades because they did not include building a workforce from within, and now they're forced to do that. So what we're saying is, if you want to learn how to be a carpenter, you want to learn how to be a bricklayer, a brick mason, if you want to learn how to repair washing machines, you need to be going to the community colleges. And that's why we say you got to vote to make sure that the tuition is limited and free so that you can get in and get out of your first 2 years and enter the workforce making several $1,000s a month, where you can have a family and not be $100,000 or $200,000 in debt. My generation, we know that you need all of that to be a well-rounded worker. Now, labor is beginning to organize very effectively again.
When you look at Chris Smalls with Amazon, nearly
Amazon.
200 stores, Starbucks stores, representing almost 10,000 workers are now organizing unions in Starbucks. So
And
an
in a
area,
lot, a lot of these big box stores.
Yeah.
Are now workers realize that it's more than just get an hourly wage. You need benefits.
well, you know, one of the things we learned from Reverend Jackson is the power of organizing and then exercising and maximizing your demographics. And it looks like if the numbers hold up, that Black and brown women are going to play a significant role. Gen Z, millennials are going to play a significant role. And we see a resurgence of the Black church. Talk about that combination, because when we look at some of our greatest gains and where we're trying to hold the line now, looks like that's going to be the full court press going into November.
Well, I think women are going to have to really register and vote in numbers that we've not voted in a long time. We are the majority of the population, as you know, women of all races. And so this whole abortion fight can only be won if women turn out and vote their interests and not sit back and vote based on what spouses or friends encourage them to do. Women have the power to make a difference in this election. And not just about the abortion case, but women are the majority of the workforce in healthcare and in these nursing homes. And they're working without benefits in some instances in these private homes. And so women need to turn out and vote for state state senators, state representatives who are supportive of better working conditions. Many people were getting COVID in nursing homes, the workers and the patients. And so if we're the majority, we have to vote our interests. And so women, you have to turn out. The most important thing you can do is vote in this midterm, because almost every state representative is up for re-election, as well as some senators. So I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you must vote. And if we turn out in numbers, we can change this abortion situation.
Well,
you're going state by state.
You're a practicing lawyer and accomplished at that. In over 34 states, there are voter suppression laws that have been enacted, closing polling places, moving polling places, challenging your voter ID, making it more difficult to register the early vote, limiting the hours and such.
Cutting the days.
Cutting days. It appears that this is going to be a casebook study on civil rights and the right to vote, because in many of these states, they've already geared up to go after Secretary of States. They've already geared up to go into Supreme Court, state Supreme Courts, and even the U.S. Supreme Court, the fight. And so where we would think traditionally the election would end at the ballot box, in many instances it may end up in a courtroom.
Yeah. It is. And I thank God for Attorney Barbara Unwine and Transformative Justice. They've been leading rallies across the country. National Bar Association, American Bar Association are prepared lawyers to be in polling places. You'll hear from the National Lawyers Committee. They are working diligently to protect the vote all across the country because it is going to be a fight. There's a move in this nation to restrict, reduce, and limit the most fundamental constitutional right we have, and that is our right to vote. The other thing is some of these candidates are doing some strange commercials.
Bizarre.
I mean, bizarre commercials. And they're untrue. And so we have to really fact check some of these political commercials that you see. You know, in Chicago and most major cities in America, there's a level of violence in poor communities. And you see people leaving where they live to go to these urban centers to tell us how to stop the violence. Well, it's a complicated situation. It's not a one fix. You can be mad at the police, you can be mad at your elected official, but the reality is it takes all of us. And we talked about organizing, and we're calling for a real organized summit on crime and violence. Much of this crime is orchestrated by forces outside of the communities where the crime occurs. These kids can't manufacture guns.
And funded.
Well funded.
Yes.
I mean, well funded. These kids, that is a 12-year-old, they can't buy a gun in any state. So it takes a parent or an adult to purchase the weapon, get the weapon, put it in the hands of a child who has not been trained in handling weaponry at all. You have shootings throughout communities. Parents are irresponsible in many instances with their children, so it's parental responsibility, it's police, it's elected officials in terms of how freely guns are being sold on the internet, sold in these, what they call those sales?
Straw purchases.
Straw purchases.
Yeah.
Like the guy that was in Wisconsin, his mother bought the gun and drove him to Wisconsin from Illinois.
Yes.
I wouldn't drive my child anywhere, and I wouldn't buy a gun for my child and think that was okay. But you have a lot of that, so there's some parental responsibility, police responsibility, and then the faith community. We have to convene in our faith communities. The churches and mosques and temples sit in places, in communities. They have an address.
Yeah.
And there are people that live all around there and where the violence is happening. We have to take some responsibility to convene the stakeholders, principals, and popular personalities. We talked about this music. We got to deal with that. Music and images.
From trill to drill.
Trill to drill. That drill music, it's a movie, and you got to do something. And the radio stations and these, what are these people that advertise and fund this drill music and this music that is, well, preachers will say it's satanic, okay? But it is just horrific. You have a whole generation, the images that they're bombarded with are harmful to our brains. It rewires their thinking. And violence now becomes the order of the day, and death means nothing.
You know, we have a partnership with Facebook where we'll be training faith-based leaders and stakeholders on understanding the nuances of politics and being able to differentiate truth from what we call fake news, and we certainly see that in the entertainment sector. Those of you who are watching, you know, this is a tremendous opportunity for you to become a part of the fastest growing civil rights army on the planet, and that's the Rainbow Push Coalition. We have to say how excited we are that Reverend Jackson is in the next phase of his recovery and recuperation. All of these years, never taken a vacation.
Never had a vacation.
I don't even know, he doesn't know anything about Disneyland or a resort or playing golf or any of that.
None of that.
And he's took the time off following physicians and family. And I don't know about you, he looks amazing.
Not only does he look amazing, he is amazing. And his position is he wants to wear out, working his way out rather than rusting out. And so when you think about here's a man that's been on this journey for more than 60 years. I mean, 60 years of continuous service. And so how do you help him? How do you support him? Well, I can tell you, you got to get a membership in PUSH.
Today.
His birthday is coming up, 61st birthday. Anybody
81st.
else? 81st, I'm
You're
sorry.
gonna give him COVID age? He get some time back?
Get it back, yield back the time. And you know, when you ask the Reverend, what would you like for your birthday? I want a membership.
I want a membership.
That's all he asked. I don't know anybody. Pastors have anniversaries. They have all kinds of stuff. Reverend said, just give me some memberships. And so what we want you to do is help us bless the organization by joining. It's only $35 a year. So if you know 81 people or 8 people or 810 people on your Facebook page, ask them to join PUSH. If you got 800 people or 81 people on your Twitter feed, then ask them to join PUSH. Why? Because that will help us continue to bring you information, fight for you.
You know, these memberships make such a difference as we initiate these programs and these efforts across the country. When we come to your city and come to your locale, we don't have a budget, but we do have a belief, and that is nothing is too hard for our God. Help us and help Reverend Jesse Jackson as we are keeping hope alive.
We are sanctuary. We are a sanctuary.
When I think of Rainbow PUSH, I think of 2 words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Corporate partnership.
Stop the violence. Save the children.
Don't get in. Shut it down. If we don't get in, shut it down.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution. Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive. Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive.
We want to be bridges to end these cultural gaps.
We're going forward. By hope. Not backwards. By fear.